The following program is rated TV MA-LSV. It contains strong language, sexual situations, and violence. It is intended only for mature audiences.
Welcome, everyone, to Skulls and Stilettos. This is the podcast that delves into the extraordinary lives of remarkable individuals who have made significant impacts in their lives, their community, and their respective fields. And I'm your host, Janine Stella. I'm thrilled to have you join me. And today we have a truly exceptional story to share, one that will inspire and leave you in awe. Our spotlight shines on the remarkable life of Charlie Hardage, a name synonymous with resilience and determination and success. Charlie's journey is nothing short of remarkable, from humble beginnings to conquering insurmountable obstacles. Charlie has really become a living testament to the power of perseverance and the pursuit of dreams. And in a world where challenges can seem overwhelming, Charlie's story really serves as a beacon of hope and a reminder that with enough passion and dedication, one can overcome any adversity that life throws at you. So through his unwavering spirit and a unique blend of talent and hard work, Charlie has carved out a place for himself. And throughout this episode, we're going to uncover the secrets behind his achievements, explore pivotal moments in his life that shaped his path, and really gain invaluable insights from personal experiences. So we're going to dive into the mind of this extraordinary individual and take his wisdom that he's acquired along the way. So I want everyone to sit back and relax and get ready to be stellified. Charlie's probably wondering what that means. So join me as we embark on this really great exploration of Charlie's incredible journey and really unravel the layers of his success and what it means to overcome incredible odds. So Charlie is an individual who, and I'll just brag about him for a second before I bring him on, he has really navigated challenges and setbacks with resilience. So his experience and background is as an infantry team leader in the U.S. Army. This includes being shot in Afghanistan, and this really has really shaped his perspective on life and propelled him on a path towards personal growth and success. So we're going to dive into the impact of these experiences on his mental health, his transition from corporate job to a full-time real estate investor, and his real commitment to helping others achieve financial freedom. So we're going to get excited, and can't wait to introduce Charlie. Welcome to the show.
That was by far the best introduction I could have ever asked for. Thank you, Janine. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on this fabulous Thursday. The sun is shining where I am. It's a beautiful day, and I am so excited to share your story and have you explain your story to people who are just going to be shocked when they hear what has happened to you and what life has thrown at you and how you've overcome, so much. So, just for the audience, where were you born and raised, just so people can get a background of you?
I was born in San Jose, California, lived there for 5 weeks and didn't like it and left. No, my dad took a job in Dallas, and even though I wasn't born there, I'm still a Texas boy. Lived in Plano, and up until college, went to Arkansas, and had a career fair that I went to, and got a job here in Nashville. Been here for the most part ever since. My wife is born and raised here in Middle Tennessee, and so if I ever wanted to move, I'd be moving without her. So Tennessee's my new home.
I love that. One of my bucket list places that I haven't been back to since childhood. So I'm excited to explore Tennessee again. It's beautiful.
It's really pretty. Dallas is all flat and buildings, and Tennessee has green and hills and mountains, and it's gorgeous here.
And like the Grand Ole Opry and, Ruby Falls and all the fun stuff. Music scene.
I'm not a country fan at all, but there's tons of live music downtown. I mean, it has exploded over the last 10 years, and so it's a really nice, fun 3-day weekend trip.
I love that. So you're in beautiful Tennessee, and there's a lot of things that we're gonna kind of dive deep into as a team leader in the U.S. Army. What happened to you on that specific day in Afghanistan? So let's go back there. Let's go back there on this point where it just changed literally the moment that just changed your life as you know it. So you enlisted in the Army, and then what happened? Tell us that story.
Yeah, and so if you're not familiar with enlisting or being an officer, I had a 4-year degree. I could have gone the officer route, but I wanted to have one deployment of what I call fun and be infantry and, just like the movies, kick in doors and stuff like that. And so my first deployment, I went to Afghanistan. My unit was already there, and so I joined about halfway through, and first few months was pretty slow, and then the next several months was what's called fighting season, and it's fighting season because the weather is not freezing. Afghanistan's actually a desert, and so at night, during the day it's 120 degrees, but at night it can get down to 70, and not a big issue, except when you're sweaty and have a bunch of gear on. 70 is freezing. So that was the first deployment. Got into a lot of firefights and ambushes and things like that. Came back for a year and a half and was in the field a lot. I was semi-newly married at the time. And we married before my first deployment, but that year and a half where we were at base, I was in the field about half of that. So really, and then deployed again. And so the first, I think, 3 years of our marriage, we were together for about 8 months.
What year was that?
2009 is when I joined. 2010 and 2012 were the deployments.
And everything started out pretty normal in the Army. I mean, as normal as it could be on your tours in Afghanistan?
Yeah, and I didn't really know any difference. Every deployment is totally different. You can be in the same battalion and be in different AOs or areas of operation. And one could be extremely hard. One could be, I don't want to say cakewalk, but, not much going on. And so every deployment, every combat outpost can be totally different. And First deployment was first few months, like I said, it wasn't in fighting season, and so it was pretty slow. And then the last 4 months was pretty brutal, getting ambushed and shot at multiple times a day. And the interesting part too, Janine, is my second deployment. That's the one I got shot, but it's kind of funny because the first, I was there 6 months, a little over 6 months, and there was no firefights whatsoever. There's no action whatsoever. And of course, that's the one I got shot. So the first one, super dangerous, super, a lot going on. And that's the one that I made it through. And then the next one, nothing going on. And that's the one I got shot at.
And you were telling me briefly that you didn't really have a warm welcome entered the Army, that you weren't well received by the other people in your unit.
Yeah, and so there's two parts to that. The first part is I was the new guy, and we were in combat. It truly was life or death, and so they wanted to make sure I knew what was going on. And I wasn't the only new guy. There was I think 4 or 5 of us that went to. There's 2 platoons stationed at the same COP, and there's 4 or 5 of us that were new, and so we all kind of got that, make sure you get it, because I truly was protecting people's lives and they were protecting mine. So they wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing. And then the second part of that, and this kind of continued on for the first couple years I was in the military, was the fact that I had a degree, and I won't get too much into it, but I went in as an E4 as a specialist because I had a college degree. Whereas some people go in as an E1, E2, E3, and had to, quote unquote, earn the E4, earn the specialist rank. And so I got a lot of maybe jealousy, but just not being nice because I had a degree and I didn't earn my E4. I think that was part of it. Some people said I had no real, 18, 19-year-olds said I had no real world experience, even though I had worked at an IT company, lived on my own for years, paid my own bills. So it was interesting that kind of get that reception. Now that wasn't a lot of people. That was a handful of people. Some others, just in the military, you have your teams that you're with. You have people that you room with, you bunk with, and so those guys all accepted me. No issues there. But a few people just didn't like that I went to college, I guess. And I did not go to the office.
That probably was the start of everything, like go full circle. Things that you're experiencing now, I mean, that kind of set the tone for what was going to happen next. So you weren't well received. It was life or death situation. You made it through your first tour. And then what happened on the second tour?
Yeah, that definitely started it. And it wasn't guys, it was the leadership that kind of instilled that. And so the first 2 years was pretty brutal. Part of that was deployment, and then afterwards was just making me do extra details and things like that. And details are just jobs that no one wants to do. And I was voluntold, to do it. Voluntold is a word I came to love, I guess, just in the military. Because it's funny to me. But second deployment, Afghanistan, we went to our AO, area of operation, is where the birthplace of the Taliban, actually. And again, there were many other companies and platoons just spread out through, 4 or 5 square miles. And some of the other platoons and companies, it was brutal. A lot of firefights all the time, and we never experienced anything ever. No one ever came to attack the base. We never got into a firefight, and so it was really chill. But that actually made it worse, because not worse, but as infantry, you're trained to shoot and shoot back and ambush and pull security. And when we weren't able to really do our job, that meant we were back at the base a lot, pulling security, doing extra training and things like that. So second deployment was some guys got into trouble because they were bored, quite frankly. They got into trouble, and so that created
There was nothing going on.
Nothing going on.
They were like, what are we going to do?
Yeah, and so
Right.
they would huff air or, try to find local narcotics, which, you can look out and see poppies all over the place. And they're really pretty, actually. But, so people were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And that created just more challenges of, we got to dump bags. We had to do that multiple times a day. So we had to pack everything up we owned into a duffel bag and dump it out in front of leadership. And it's just like, you had 2 or 3 people doing that, and you're now talking about 50 people having to, kind of get the consequences of 2 or 3. And so that was really frustrating. And just because nothing was going on. So people were getting into trouble.
And then can you share what happened, like the circumstance surrounding the incident where you were shot?
Yeah. So we worked with, there's kind of 3 Afghani forces that we worked with. You have the ANA, the Afghan National Army. And for anyone not familiar with Afghanistan, Kandahar is close to Pakistan, very close to the border, and that's where a lot of the fighting happens. And the Marines were in the Helmand province, was just west of us. Kabul is the capital, and that is relatively westernized and safe, or it was at the time. Not anymore. Another podcast episode. But
sure.
But Kabul's in the north, and so that's pretty far, and totally different cultures, different languages. And that's where most of the National Army came from, because they weren't Taliban, hated the Taliban because Taliban were ruining their country. And then you have the Afghan police, which is, not police that we think of. They do their best to fight back, but they don't have a lot of resources. And quite frankly, a lot of them are corrupt. And then you have the Afghan local police, the ALP, and those are basically villagers that one day they're with the Taliban, one day they're with us. The next day with the Taliban, next day with us. It's whoever's paying them, right? Whoever can offer them security, and their loyalty changes literally overnight, sometimes in the same day. And we were building a ALP, a local checkpoint for the local police. And to provide more context, there was a river bed right across the, I don't know, 200-300 meters from where we were building this. And it was a really good point to provide overwatch, because Taliban would come from across the river, and then when they would come, through that area. And so we built the checkpoint there to provide a local police security in a little, police station, basically. And myself and one other guy were with 2 local police. And at this point, we weren't running the show. We were providing support for Afghani, military and police. We weren't the ones leading the efforts. We were letting them lead it with our guidance, and we would support them. And so 2 of the ALP had to go with us and pull security. And so there's 4 of us. We were probably 100 meters away from where the rest of the unit was. And we had a radio, and one of the local police, they all have AKs, AK-47s over there, which is an automatic weapon. And it's the round is thicker. It's bigger than the normal round that most weapons in the U.S. are. And from about 10 feet away, again, myself and my buddy, we were pulling security, and local police were smoking hashish and doing whatever they want. And one of the guys opened up on me and shot 3 rounds. One hit me right in the neck, and I fell backwards and told the other guy with me, I was like, "Kick me the radio." because I had dropped the radio. And so he gave me the radio. I called it up and said, "Hey, I got shot. Come over." And the first transmission didn't go through. The next one,
Wow.
the other team leader in my squad, he and I are still brothers to this day, and talk all the time. But he actually called on the radio the same time I did, and so it's called stepping on each other, right? So it's not like a phone where both transmissions can go through. It's like they cancel each other out. And so the third time I called up and I'm like, "Hey, send Doc, I got shot." And so and he called me because he heard a gunshot and wanted to make sure nothing was going on. And so they came running over as the medic, another EMT who I talked to a lot. Going back to the first deployment, he saved lives there because there was so much action. So he was, really more versed than most medics and nurses now.
I was going to ask you how the medical attention was when that happened.
Yeah, so I fell back and I didn't feel any pain when they propped me up on my right side. And I have a 10-year-old daughter and I tell her this story sometimes. But the only thing that hurt me at the time was this, and it's funny, but this long blade of grass that kept kind of poking me in the eye. And so I was sitting down there just blowing it away because it kept hitting me. And I didn't feel anything. And then I remember getting medevaced and I was on morphine, a lot of morphine, and was, felt drunk and didn't know what was going on. I remember getting loaded onto the helicopter. I remember landing and them carrying me. And then I remember a really bright light. And it wasn't the bright light that, oh my gosh, this is the end. It was an operating light. Bunch of doctors and nurses around me, and they said, "Hey, we're gonna cut your shirt and pants off and check everything else." And then I woke up, I think it was 10 to 12 hours later, with a nurse handing me a sat phone saying, "You need to call your family." And I was like, no idea what was going on. I remember being in so much pain, not being able to move, and called my brother-in-law, who's my best friend. And I was like, "Hey, tell my sister." I remember calling my wife, who was 7.5 months pregnant at the time. I said, "Don't freak out. I got shot in the shoulder." I didn't want to tell her it was the neck, and she knew something was up. And fortunately, she had moved back home. She lived with her parents. She was 25, 26 at the time, lived with her parents, and because she was pregnant. And so they were there to provide support. And that was kind of the, journey of recovering, which, I was, my wife was 7.5 months pregnant. Really the biggest thing was,
Can you
I wanted to hold my
imagine?
daughter. I wanted to hold my daughter when she was born, and I didn't think I was going to be able to. And fortunately I did so much physical therapy, have such mad respect for doctors, surgeons, nurses. I mean, it's incredible what they do. And,
You were there, and how long did it take? I mean, did you recover in Afghanistan? How long did it take before
No.
you came back to the U.S.?
I think overall it took 8 or 9 days, and that was going from Kandahar to I was there, I think 3 days, went to Kabul for a few hours, went to Germany for a few days, Maryland for a day or two, and then went to Fort Bragg at the time, which is where we were stationed. The recovery process, I mean, that took, I still had an open wound in my back for, I think, until Thanksgiving or so, which would have been about August, September, about 4 months with a big open wound in the back.
That is insane. So you have an open wound in your back. Did anyone come to talk to you from a mental health standpoint right after that happened? Or were they solely focused on your physical recovery at that point?
I don't remember anyone talking immediately after that. Really, I went to a chiropractor who was phenomenal, and he recommended me going to talk to a pain psychologist. And I thought it was to deal with the pain, and that's partly what it was, but it was really, and I didn't know this at the time. I really only figured this out a few years ago. She was also more of a therapist, and in the military, if you talk to a therapist, something's wrong with you, and you don't do that, right?
So it's frowned upon
unless you're
in
weak.
the military.
Yeah. And fortunately, at that point I was in a different unit, and it was the Warrior Transition Battalion, and so it's 100% about you recovering from your injury, whatever that would be. And so they didn't view it that way, but it definitely frowned upon. And so talked to her, I don't know, several months, and gave me some breathing exercises, and we talked about survivor's guilt and what that meant, and yeah, went deep. But then after I was kind of discharged from her, I didn't talk to anyone up until about 8 months ago, probably. So there's this gap of let's call it 7, 8, 9 years. I didn't know I had a problem.
So, wow, so about 8 years time,
yeah.
you had been struggling with, we're going to get into it, you were struggling, experiencing these symptoms of PTSD, amongst other things, and you really didn't know what to call it or what it was. How did you find that out?
Several steps. I think number one, I think deep down I knew I had it, but I lied to myself. Like I said, my first deployment was super rough. I developed insomnia there, didn't know it at the time. It was a slow process, but 8 years ago, mental health, PTSD, you don't talk about that. And I think the last 8, 9 months, maybe even a year ago, I was like, I think I do have some issues that I need to work through. And it was, I have a 10-year-old daughter who is absolutely amazing. I've been extremely blessed to either, work remotely or be home for most of her life. Most parents don't get that relationship. And I noticed sometimes I'd kind of get onto her a little bit over stupid things. And I was like, that's not me. And I think after, a few of those, and then just like, I think I do have something I need to talk about, talk to someone about. I started going to, go to the VA, getting phenomenal care, and talk to primary care. And they said, okay, we'll put you in contact with someone. And so it's really just going through, what I experienced and my symptoms and how to cope with that. Breathing exercises.
What kind of symptoms were you having?
Anxiety, a little bit of depression. I've always been on edge. I used to be extremely extroverted. I want to stay home all the time. Don't really like social settings because I don't like talking to people much in big group settings. I have no issues talking one-on-one or a few, but I used to love parties and meeting people. Now I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'll stay home. Became much more of a homebody. A little bit of road rage, never anything too major, but I get so frustrated if, I know a lot of people do, but when my 10-year-old starts calling me out on it, it's like, whoa, I got a problem. And
so
my
you've
wife
struggled with PTSD for all these years, and then take us back. You come home, you have to integrate into the workforce. So you start working in a corporate setting, and then you transition to that to a full-time real estate investor.
Yeah, I had worked in IT sales for 2 years before the military, and then in 5 years at the Army. And then when I got out of the military, and I was going to make that a career, that was my career move, 5 years prior. And I wanted to go the officer route eventually. I was literally putting a packet in to go to grad school, have the military pay for it, and then I got shot. And so had to come up with a new plan. And I knew IT sales, definitely not my passion, but I knew I could do it. And so kind of went that route. got an entry-level job at 30 years old with a wife and kid because I didn't have any professional experience, minus 2 years in the minus 2 years prior to the military. So went back and really tried. I started being really quiet there because I didn't really want to speak up because in the military, you don't really speak up. It's this is always how we've done it, so we're not going to change. Did that for a few years and liked it, but was really frustrated with a lot of the stuff going on. And after getting demoted, after asking for a raise, killing it and asking for a raise and getting denied, I was like, what is going on? Then
Meanwhile, struggling with mental health issues and PTSD
that I didn't know I had. Yeah, that I didn't know I had. And I definitely think a lot of my frustrations came from that, and I didn't even know it. And don't want to blame it on PTSD, but I definitely think that had a huge play and huge impact on my thought process while working for someone else. And then, I got into real estate 7 years ago, started really getting into it 3 years ago. And, at another company, I was sick of it. I was sick of kind of not having say and not being able to make changes. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm gonna do real estate full time because it was something I wanted to do anyway. I had a 5-year plan that ended up being about a 1.5-year plan, where I would leave a job, I'd work for myself, I would help other people invest in real estate passively and help them achieve financial freedom as well.
And your mental health struggles through the last, let's say, 7 or 8 years, did that affect any of the relationships at home with your wife or daughter or family members? And as you transition into real estate and, being a small business owner, there's a lot of demands with that.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think it did. And my wife and I mean, phenomenal relationship. We don't argue, we don't fight. And so it wasn't like I started yelling or arguing or anything like that. It was more of being quick to be negative about something stupid. Well, why are you doing that? Instead of just talking and communicating, I was just kind of quick to be rude sometimes. Same thing with my daughter. She might say something and I would snap at her. And it's just like, that's not me. I don't, and my wife said something to me. She's like, are you okay? And it's like, yeah, I don't know why I did that. And, my daughter, the three of us all have a phenomenal relationship and we check each other. And, we tell our daughter like, hey, check us, like totally feel free to check us respectfully and all that. And so she started checking me with, that was mean. You didn't need to say it like that. I was just asking a question. I was like, who am I? This is not me. And so that, probably started a year and a half ago. And after several times of checking me, being mean and with the road rage, I was like, okay, I think I have PTSD and I've never talked to anyone about it because going back to the pain psychologist, that wasn't really about PTSD. It was more just, how are you? This is how you deal with the pain and the mental pain.
It wasn't treating the condition that you had. It was just like a wellness check, so to speak.
Exactly. And she did awesome stuff. And I think had I known now what had I known then what I know now, I would have probably asked for more help from her, or at least, she could refer me to someone, but I didn't because I was fine. Right. I was totally fine. And I don't have that. And, to be fair, the PTSD is an anxiety, depression. There's so many different stages. I knew people that would have night terrors all the time, wake up, sweat, all that. And that wasn't me. So I didn't have it. Right. That was my thought process. Oh, I'm not that bad. But there's all types of stages. And so while I have it, I think it's, mild to moderate, but, it's still something I can talk about, still something that anyone should get help for. June is PTSD Awareness Month, and there's, I don't know who set it up, but if you are struggling with mental illness and anxiety, depression, you can call 988. If you're a veteran, it's 988. You press 1. The VA has so many resources now that they didn't have 8 years ago. So many groups are out there because I think mental health has become, it's slowly being destigmatized as a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing, but you need help, right?
And on that note, that kind of plays into veteran suicide, and you were which is a huge problem in America today. And you were telling me after that second tour in Afghanistan, what happened to several men in your unit?
I think our first deployment, we lost maybe 10 guys, 8 to 10 guys. It's
combat.
not, yeah, in combat, lost 8 to 10 guys. Afterwards, in the last 8 years, most of these people have been out, and I think I was actually going through the numbers 2 nights ago. I think I know for sure 7 people have committed suicide from my unit. 7, which is and honestly, it's probably 1 or 2 more. It's 7 that I know of that didn't get help, and maybe didn't know they had it. And the military does not do a good job of forcing people to, soldiers to talk to mental health. It's a bad thing. And it sucks getting, seeing on Facebook or a text, another one. And it's like, golly, man, it's just such a terrible. Talking to someone to get help is such a terrible thing. You can do it with a doctor, but how dare you do it with a mental health doctor? Is kind of what we're told. And so I think a lot of people don't know there's help out there. They think they're weak. There's something wrong with them. They're different. And maybe
have you been able to engage in advocacy work related to veterans' mental health?
No, I do post about it on LinkedIn. I'm starting to talk about it on podcasts and with other people, because I want people to know that, just because I'm in real estate and work for myself doesn't mean I have everything together. I'm not perfect. Despite what LinkedIn and Facebook and social media say and appear, I'm not perfect. And I know there's a lot of other people that struggle with it, and, get help. There's nothing wrong with getting help. My LinkedIn, Charles Hardage, or go to my website if you want to just talk to me about it.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I didn't mean to plug that now, but hkigllc.com is our real estate website. At the bottom of that, there's my calendar, or you can contact me there. Facebook, LinkedIn, Charles Hardage. There's not many of us. So please reach out. I have no problem talking to you and at least pointing you in the right direction if I can't help.